Greetings, friends, and welcome to episode 3 of How to Become Spiritual. Each one stands on its own, but you can go back and catch the first two if you missed one or both of those. And it is cumulative when we think about all these things together. But thank you for joining me, joining us. Others are joining with you, like we're in a community here today. So thinking about the spiritual life, one of my premises is like it's like the greatest thing you can do. It's wonderful and it's hard. It's just hard. It's hard for different reasons. Now, if you say spiritual life, some people think, I send out those little text messages that people get. I know one guy, he says, that's my spiritual life. Well, it's a text that takes less than a minute to read. That's not hard. But really growing in the spiritual life, it takes more than, reading a one-sentence text once a day, or a quickie devotional at night, or a prayer right before bedtime, right? So hard really to grow close to God and to become the person that God's inviting you to be. Why is this? There are a number of reasons that we could talk about, but the most interesting one to me, I think, is years ago I read a book by Thomas Merton, this great Catholic spiritual writer. And he says this thing where he says coldness in the devotional life, like, being bored, being kind of cold, not warming up to it. He said it might be a kind of unconscious defense against the grace of God. Like, I've been thinking about that for years. Right? We tend to think I'm bored in the spiritual life because something's wrong with me, or this is boring material, or if they just have something more interesting, I'd get interested in it, or if I didn't have so much to do. But he says it might be an unconscious defense against the grace of God. Like we sense God's grace is coming, and it sounds like a good thing, but it might be like a loss of control. It might be a loss of me being the center of my life. It might be a lot of things. Changed existence, right? What is that? I'll just stay busy, right? I love that, a defense. The whole control thing is really an issue. The spiritual life isn't getting more control over your life. Prayer isn't like getting God to help you get things under control. It's a yielding, it's a wasting of time. We talked about all these things. Time, it just takes time. It takes time. If you're going to cultivate a relationship with God, it's going to take some time, not 30 seconds at night, more time than that, maybe more time than you feel like you have to give. But then we have time for all kinds of things. And this is God. This is your life. This is becoming a wise person, of having some depth, of having purpose in your lifetime. It's such a great gift from God, but we turn it into an enemy, or we wrestle with it, or we try to beat time or cram stuff into time. But it's such a beautiful gift from God's given us time. Karl Barth, great theologian, said God's given us time so that we can build a relationship with God, so that we can know God, so that we can live, so that we can be. And time, you know how precious it is. If somebody told you didn't have much time left, you'd realize time's amazing. Time's amazing. And it seems to go by quickly. People say this all the time. The older you get, the faster it goes. And what I say all the time, and it fits here, is the only way to slow time down is to slow down, which seems a little bit paradoxical. So the spiritual life is hard work. It takes some sweat, stick-to-itiveness, all of that. That's why it's worthwhile. Everything in my life that I've done that means something to me. I got a PhD in theology. That was hard. That's part of what makes it good. I can play the piano. That didn't happen in a day. It's really cool, but that took a lot of work, a lot of practice, and then it's just a great pleasure to be able to do it later. Everything is like that. Plus, spiritual life's hard because it's about God, right? It's not, we're studying a green pea. Like, I kind of understand that before too long. But it's God. It's like larger than the greatest mind could comprehend. So that's always hard. And we live in a world that doesn't care that much about God. We live in a world that's full of distractions, peppering us with noise and cool things and glittery things. It's hard. Maybe the greatest enemy, weirdly, of the spiritual life is the phone, the internet, all this. You may be watching this on your phone. So at the moment, it's not an enemy. But it can be a great enemy. And what I like to say is that, when I have this, I'm always looking at it, why I'm available, right? But if you're always available, then you're never available. Like, we know about this with other people. If I'm at dinner with Lisa and I'm like on my phone, I'm not very available to her, how she feels, how her day was, or whatever. I'm not available to other people, but I'm also not available to God. It's like, oh, God's not in here. God's up there. God's around us. God's breathing in and out of us. God's beneath us. God's amazing. Such a distraction. Technology, just a thing. Silence is hard for us. You get, I read somewhere, you get addicted to busyness and stress. Actually, physically, you do. And something I read is with that, right? So you're addicted to stress and being busy. That's why when you go on vacation and you stop and you don't do anything, you say, man, I was tireder than I thought I was. It's because you're getting that, it's like sagging down that rush that you had from all the adrenaline. And you become accustomed to silence, and it can be a wonderful thing. I remember when I was a young pastor, they sent the clergy on a retreat. And when we got there, they said it's a silent retreat. Everybody panicked for the first day. Like, oh, God, how do we not talk? So hard not to talk. Second day, it got to be like, nah, don't have to talk. We can be quiet. And by the third day, it was wonderful. I didn't want to go back to the world of talking and noise. You have to get used to it. Takes time. So spiritual things, prayer. You know, do you pray silently? I'm somebody, I'll be honest with you, I pray better out loud. When I do silence, my brain just gets distracted in 1,000 directions. So I pray out loud. You got to be careful where you do this. I do it in the car, do it in the shower. Such things. You got to find what will work for you. The distractions are interesting. I've been trying to find this. Somebody told me years ago, I think it's in a book, I think it was by Reinhold Niebuhr, but I'm not sure that's right, that when you get distracted in prayer or you're trying to meditate and think about it, and your mind keeps shooting off to something. My mind does that. I'm real bad at distractions. Instead of feeling like, oh, I'm a schmuck because I keep getting distracted, or it's the fault of the distractions. Whoever wrote this said the distractions are a key to tell you actually what you need to be talking about with God. Like whatever it is that distracts you, like drag it back in and say, God, I thought I needed to pray about this. I thought I wanted to say this in my prayer. But whatever distracted me, that's got to be like a thing. And God, you and I need to deal with that. Now, sometimes having an image can sort of help us focus. You know, in my bathroom, it's a place that I go to retreat, it's quiet, nobody's going to bother me in there. Stephen King says, you know, if you want to be a reader, you know, do it in the bathroom. Like it's a great place, nobody will bother you. Same thing for prayer and thinking about God. I have just a little cross that came from Central America, and I tried just to focus on that cross and think about my brothers and sisters in Central America, but also about Christ and his cross. It just gives me something just to focus on. Helps from getting too distracted. One of the things you may have noticed in this series, I haven't said a lot about the Bible. You tend to think, well, the spiritual life, go read your Bible. I'm not really sure about that. I know people who are great students of the Bible, and they're not very spiritual people. I know people, you maybe do too, who they know a lot about the Bible, and they're just mean. Right? The Bible for them becomes like a weapon. You know, you thump other people with it. You judge other people with it. So the Bible's important, but what I want to do is not like, okay, I did my Bible reading, check. I'm a reader, check. I read my pages, check. You're still doing. You're still busy. It's just a religious busyness. Spirituality isn't religious busyness. Spirituality is being able to be still in God's Spirit. Still before God. So even when we get around to talk more about Bible reading, you know, I'm going to say the Bible's, it's a hard book. It's like this sprawling, complicated thing. Don't try to read it cover to cover. Good grief. It's a mess. It's crazy. It's wonderful. It's all those things, right? And so if we're going to do Bible reading, what I want us to do is to read really slowly and to ponder. It's not a Dan Brown novel. It's not a Colleen Hoover novel. It's not a financial report from a company. It's God's Word. And so you go slow, you ponder, you chew on it, you let it go into you, you try to listen to it, you try to understand it, you try to absorb it. Takes time. We'll say more about that. I would say for the moment, there are three key Bible verses for me in this series. The first is one we've already talked about, Psalm 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. It's just such a basic thing. And I always joke around. I found an ancient Hebrew manuscript. That's not true. It'd be fun if I did. That says, that psalm actually says, not be still and know that I'm God, but be still and know that I'm God and you aren't. It's one of the reasons we rush around. We're trying to be God. Be still. God is God. You're free to be still. You need to be still because God is God. A second is in Psalm 139, where the psalmist says all these wonderful things. It's a long psalm, but at the end says, search me, O God, and know my heart, and see if there's anything in me that's awry, that's not of you. For the spiritual life, it's not just kind of being my same old self and then adding spirituality on top of it. There's some clutter in me. Sometimes it can be my piety, it can be my religiosity, it can be dumb things I've always believed about God, but they aren't actually true. It can be judgmental attitudes toward who knows what it might be. Whatever it is in me that is not of God, I don't want to hide it. I want to say, search me, O God, find it, cleanse me, heal me. And then finally, in Galatians chapter 5, Paul talks about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, generosity, all those things. That's a sign of the spiritual life. To the degree to which you are cultivating and growing in the spiritual life, you're going to have more love, joy, more peace, more patience. You're going to be kinder, you're going to be more generous, and so on. We'll talk about that, inner dispositions. What kind of life are we leading? Who are we becoming? Am I really living into God's image, or am I being sort of a fake, less wonderful version of myself within myself, the way I interact with the world and other people? So we'll continue to talk about these things and grow together in the spiritual life. Thank you for joining me. It just means so much, like, for you to take the time to do this. That's like such a spiritual thing to do. It means you care about God. It means you trust me, I guess, that you'll listen. I'm really honored by that. But more that we trust God. There is a God, and we want to connect with God in a deeper way, in a more robust way, in a way that's more fulfilling, in a way that's challenging, and in a way that at the end of the day will bring us a great, great joy and purpose. Thank you for joining us.